Hello. Today we're going to talk about what is food recovery. We heard of what food management. We heard about food engineering or food sustainability or even food service management. But what is food recovery? Seems to be a new word. But it's been in vogue for the last 10 years. Food recovery is something that we do during the entire process of the food chain. That is, we either try to save food or energy or the environment during the process of the food chain. Now, what's the food chain? Food chain is the process or the stages from the farm, right from the time anything is grown, then it is transported, then it is distributed, and then it's consumed. That's the food chain. It includes the storage as well. And during the food chain, you can have a situation of a lot of food loss or waste, which is what we are trying to recover. Now, there's a difference between food loss and food waste. Food loss is what we principally see that occurs before it reaches the consumer. Areas like losses during storage or during transportation or packing. Whereas food waste is happening at the time of the consumption, either because of excess use or people don't know how to manage their food, and therefore it goes to the garbage or finally to the landfill. Both have to be managed. And during this process of the food chain, you could also use food waste to generate energy. That's one way of recovering the food waste. Or the food waste has got an impact on the environment. A lot of food waste goes into the landfill. So if you save food waste, it can help the environment by having less amount of materials in the landfill. So this is about generally about what is food recovery. So why do you want to do food recovery? The two reasons. Reason number one is that you're looking at hunger or malnutrition. Now for that, let me quote some statistics for you. We have about 7 billion people. And out of that, about 11%, say about 8 million, are supposed to be, or rather statistics have shown that they are either hungry or malnourished. And statistics number two is that of all the food that is produced in the world, one third, or rather 33% of the food gets wasted. Now, what does it mean? Is that on one hand, you got hunger going on. Yeah, people don't have food to eat. On the other hand, we're wasting food. It's also been found that if you save one fourth of that one third that we're wasting, that is enough to feed the hungry. So the problem looks very simple. Save food and you solve the problem of hunger and malnutrition. But it's not happening like that. It's a lot more complicated. So that's about one reason why we need to save food. The other reason is purely it makes a good business sense. You save on cost and thereby you are able to look at a more profitable operation. This is of great use in hotels, restaurants, or even in corporate establishments or in canteens where they prepare a lot of food for consumption. This is the second reason. So there are two reasons for why we should save food. Now, where does this food wastage, food loss or wastage occur? It occurs in hotels, restaurants, public establishments like canteens. That's one area. It can occur at home, right? And it can occur at any part of the food chain, right from the time, as we say, from farm to fork, right from the farmer stage, during transportation, during storage, and at the time of packing, then during use, that's consumption. During use, or rather while preparing it, and then finally during consumption. It can happen in all these areas. So, how do you save food? One method is to do an audit or an assessment, what we call as a food waste assessment audit. You try to actually study the food consumption and the food wastage during the operations and find out which are the areas which are good enough for us to work on to save food. This is gaining ground. This kind of studies are gaining ground, and thereby you can find out what kind of projects that you can do to save food. Principally, you can look at food saving at three different stages. One is what we call it as spoilage. Spoilage, the first one, is the time when it happens before it reaches the consumption point. That means during preparation, storage, or rather during production, storage, and transportation. It could be due to improper storage, due to weather conditions, or it could be because of bad packaging, or because improper farming methods. So you can have a whole lot of loss during this stages, which is what we call as spoilage. The next step is preparation. On the preparation stage, you could find that there are a lot of loss coming out due to the fact that some part of the food has to necessarily be wasted. For example, cuttings, and you have peelings, or because of the quality not being good. Like for example, tomatoes are not good enough to be used, so then it goes to the garbage. Those kind of areas during preparation. That is another source where there can be a food waste. The third one is the consumption part. In the consumption part, you're looking at how people are using the food, and at that stage, probably they take in more than they can handle. Typically happens in a buffet situation, where they take in more on the plate than they can eat, and therefore they waste a lot. So three stages can be there. Three stages during which we can study the food waste, and therefore there are a lot of projects. Now, you could have a lot of projects based on these. Some examples of projects are finding out wherever you have excess food available, and routing it to people who need them. This is the donation model. That is how we can convert that to people who really require it, like charitable institutions or people who are hungry. That is one thing. A lot of organizations are doing this kind of work, by which they collect food from places where there is excess food. It could be hotels, or it could be homes, or it could be small functions, and it's routed to people who need them. The second example of a project could be having community fridges, where you have a small fridge in a locality where people can keep their excess food there, and somebody comes and takes them. Or you could have a situation where you are converting the food waste into something useful. For example, energy. A lot of food waste can be converted by means of a process to biogas and used as fuel. Or you could convert a lot of food waste, quite a few material of food waste, into compost. So there are projects like these. Then there is a project of trying to have better inventory management in organizations, where you can have methods for reducing the consumption of food waste by ordering the right quantity, or having the appropriate quantity. So there are many projects possible, and you find that people are in fact um, working on many of these projects. There are a lot of entrepreneurs coming up with new ideas on these kind of things. Finally, let me end with this particular goal that we have by the World Health Organization called the Sustainable Development Goal, that by 2030 our food reduction will be reduced to half, 50%. We'll reduce whatever food we are doing now to reduce it to the food wastage that we are having now. We'll reduce it by what we're doing now to 50% by 2030. That's one of the goals, and hope we can all work towards that.